over to you.
Okay, perfect.
Let me turn this up just a little bit.
All right. Well, tonight we'll be talking about franchising. And like I already mentioned in the introduction, franchising can be looked at in very different ways. What I'd like to do tonight is spend some time on talking about the latest statistics on small business ownership. That includes franchises and non-franchise businesses. Look at business ownership options. Look at the franchise model. How does franchising work? Why does it work? And the range of opportunities available. Look at traits of a successful business owner. And then examples of business models in thriving industry segments. And that is something that I usually spend quite a bit of time on, but I know we have a panel later tonight where we have some of my former clients and existing franchisees that will be talking firsthand about their experience as owners. So depending on where we are with time, we might cut those short and go straight into the panel after the break. I've also been told to not take questions in between unless it is something critical. So if you could keep your questions to the end of the presentation, and I'll be happy to address those at that point in time. Let's start with small business statistics. There's 29.6 million small businesses in the US to date. They employ just over half of the country's private sector workforce. They hire about 40% of all high-tech workers. 52% of those businesses are home-based businesses. And 97.3% of those businesses are all the exporters of goods in the US, which I think is an astounding number. 99%, they're 99.7% of all employer firms. So if we look at all the small businesses and their employees, if we count all of those together, actually they constitute about 99.7% of the entire workforce in this country. And they're innovators. Very often small businesses are more nimble, able to adapt to change, and therefore innovators. If we're looking at the current climate, a lot of people ask me, well, you know, the economy, and it's tough to be a small business owner today. Intuit did a study in 2010, and 54% of small business owners experienced growth within the last 12 months, so February 09 to February of 2010. And 87% of those see growth opportunities going forward. Now, why do we want to own our own business? Financial freedom is something that I hear a lot. Controlling our own destiny, financial freedom, not being dependent on an employer. Building an asset. Whereas working for a large corporation, if we are terminated or we lose our job or things change, very often we own very little. If you own your own business, you're able to build an asset. Control and freedom. A lot of people I talk to value family time, time with their friends, with their family, with their kids, being able to attend their kids' high school soccer games and spend weekends with them. And a business very often gives you the opportunity to do so. And with that comes emotional fulfillment. Doing something you love, something you're excited about, something you identify with. Building a legacy, something else. Having something to give to your children, to hand over to family members, something that is truly your own and you have full control over. And ultimately removing that threat of job loss. And with that, replacing a lost income stream. Now, if we look at franchising, what is franchising? Franchising is not an industry, it is a business strategy. It is a network of interdependent business relationships between the franchisor, corporate, and the franchisees, the individual franchise owners. It is designed to penetrate and dominate a marketplace. So if we take one of the most established franchisors, one of the very first ones in the market, Burger King, the idea was to come into the market and really penetrate and dominate that marketplace. And with that comes efficient distribution systems. Food is one of the most obvious sectors. Efficient distribution systems when it comes to buying your meat or muffler parts or even knowledge, looking at economies of scale and taking advantage of those. But it is also about shared goals amongst participants. When you look at a franchise, it is a strategic partnership and a business strategy. So both sides, franchisor and franchisees, need to be able to share that common goal in order to be successful. Some franchise facts to put that into perspective. We've looked at small businesses in general. Let's break out the franchise segment of the US market. Franchises constitute 40.9% of all retail sales. There's about 6,000 franchisors within the US with 750,000 franchisees. They generate over $1 trillion of revenue a year, which means 1 out of every 12 businesses that you network with, that you're a customer of, that you're a client of, is a franchise. And a new franchise business is opened every 8 minutes each day. Franchises employ over 8 million people in the US and create about 170,000 new jobs each year. So again, looking at the segment of the business opportunity, franchising is a very sizable part of the US economy. Some success stories about franchising. I get asked a lot, why would I buy a franchise? Is it more risky? Is it less risky? Why would I pay somebody money for an idea that I might have come up myself? Why would I pay somebody money going forward? What are the success stories of franchises as opposed to small, independently owned businesses? Less than 5% of franchises are terminated annually. And 97% of surveyed franchises are still in business after 5 years. And most businesses fail within the first 3 to 5 years. Out of that study that Arthur Anderson ran, 97% of those franchisees were still in business after 5 years. Whereas 62.2% of independent businesses fail within the first 6 years. A franchise, and that is a fact, is 2.5 times more likely to succeed than a non-franchise business. Let's talk about the elements of a franchise. What is a franchise? How does it work? The first element is the brand. The McDonald's, the Wendy's, the Ducks, the Architect, the college nannies and tutors, the brand that the franchisor has created. The second part of a franchise is the franchisor. The franchisor is the corporate organization that has developed the concept. It is the corporate headquarters that provides the support structure to the independent and individual franchisees. And that gets us to the franchisees. The franchisees are the individual business owners. The person that looks at a franchise opportunity, signs a franchise agreement, and then becomes a small business owner within the organization of that franchisor. The operating system, something that becomes more and more important these days. A lot of my clients these days pay less attention to the brand and a lot more attention to the operating system as well as the support system. The operating system entails the marketing plans, the operations manual. How do you hire? Who do you hire? How much do you pay them? How do you interview? How do you position yourself in the market? Technology is becoming a more and more important factor. If it's software for design, if it is database management of customers and staff, if it is payroll, merchant processing, all of those things are hugely important on the day-to-day when you operate your business. And having a franchisor provide those to you is obviously a benefit to you. And with that comes the support system. When looking at a franchisor, Again, it is not just about the brain, but it is about the people that run that organization. Are they experienced? Do you align with them in terms of their vision, their mission? How do they run their business? How do they communicate? How do they treat their staff and each other? Looking at the support system and seeing if you fit into that organization. There's values and disadvantages to franchising, and I'll be the first one to talk about both, and I will tonight. Let's look at the values first. Reduced risk. Is it risk-free? No. No business is risk-free. There's always risk involved with any business you start. But like I said, owning a franchise is 2.5 times more likely to succeed. Therefore, there is a certain amount of reduced risk. Do franchises fail? Absolutely, every day. But they're less likely to fail than independently owned businesses. The operating system, and we just talked about that. No need to recreate the wheel. Unless you're in the high-tech space and some of the very healthcare and new tech and very, very new industries, chances are somebody has already thought about the idea that you're just generating. So why recreate and reinvent that wheel if somebody else has already built a system that is proven and tested, and you're able to kickstart your business with their knowledge and expertise? The advice and support. Again, a lot of you know that as business owners, it gets lonely. Small business ownership is tough. It doesn't matter if it's a franchise or an independently owned business. Having advice and support and a support system is something that, for me personally, is one of the most important things of owning a franchise. With that comes shared best practices. If you have other owners in your system that you can call up and ask for help and support, that you can bounce ideas off, that is invaluable. That very often as a small business owner is very hard to do. Training systems. Franchises work because a lot of emphasis is placed on training. How do you run your business? How do you market? Who do you hire? What is your 90-day plan, your 120-day plan, your 1, 3, and 5-year plan? How do you know you're doing well? And how do you know how to fix those things? And then in turn, not only get trained yourself, but train your staff. Sales and marketing strategies. Very few of us are sales and marketing experts. We have a lot of common sense and we think we know what we need to do. But again, having a proven plan with an attached ROI to each strategy is something that is invaluable. And purchasing power. And that goes back to a lot of retail businesses, a lot of product-based franchises. If it's meats, muffler parts, whatever it is that you need to buy for your business, having the purchasing power of a larger organization is hugely beneficial. Limitations. As a franchisee, you have to adhere to standard operating procedures. The true entrepreneur would be very unhappy within a franchise system, because when you sign your franchise agreement, you have to adhere to those standard operating procedures. That means you cannot change menu items, or the color of your logo, or the way you market, or who you market to necessarily. Some franchisors are very, very specific as to how you run your business. And if you sign that agreement, if you don't adhere to those standard operating procedures, you might risk your business license. So that is something that as an individual you need to know. I'm uncomfortable not being able to make all of those decisions. Actions of other franchisees might impact your brand and reputation. And that is something that is very, very important. If there is another franchise owner in your market of the same brand, say you own a Grease Monkey, just for example, and there is a Grease Monkey owner on the other side of town that is treating customers not very well, staff turnover is high, and their quality of service is poor, the consumer will not differentiate between that owner and you. The consumer will say, my experience at this location and this brand is terrible, and I will not go back. And that consumer does not care that you, on the other side of town, are running the best shop in town under that same umbrella. So that is something that is really important. I spend a lot of times with my client on validating that the system as a whole is a system you're comfortable with. Do you like the other owners? Do they run their businesses the way you would run your business? Are they ethical? How are their standards? How do they communicate? Because again, the consumer will not differentiate between you and the other owners in your market. You're dependent on the franchisor's overall success. And again, that goes back to how established is that franchisor? Who is their management team? How much experience do they have? What is their balance sheet like? When you look at a franchise opportunity, balance sheets and profit and loss statements of the franchisor are being disclosed to you. Do your research and make sure that you're buying into an opportunity that is a viable and stable franchise organization. And you can be limited to a certain territory or region. Most franchises, when you buy a franchise, you buy a territory, and it's usually a set of zip codes or a certain population number. And your agreement will be signed with those specific zip codes and boundaries set in that agreement. Which means if you're thinking of moving in the next 3 to 5 years, buying a franchise is not a good idea. Because if you move, you cannot take your business with you. You will have to sell your business, and if you love the business and like to continue running it, you have to buy a new franchise where you move to and start from scratch. So that is something just to keep in mind. Will you be here for the next 5 to 7 years minimum, if not longer? Let's talk about the entry into a franchise system. First off, there's the franchise fee. Once you decided you'd like to become a franchise owner and you sign your agreement, a franchise fee is due. Payable in cash, non-refundable, it's a one-time fee. I call it an initiation fee. It gets you in the club, it sets you up for training, it sets you up in their systems. It is a one-time fee though, so it's not an annual fee, it is a one-time fee. Royalties are then paid on a monthly basis. Once you own your franchise, monthly royalty payments are due to the franchisor. They're off top-line revenue, not profits, and they're usually a percentage anywhere as low as 3% and as high as 15%. Now, that's not the best range to give you, but a lot of service-based businesses run between 5 and 8%. That's kind of the standard that I see a lot of times. Now, this is something where I often get a lot of pushback. Why would I pay somebody every month a certain percentage of my top-line revenue? What do I get back in return? Well, this is where franchising works. With a good franchisor, a franchisor does not make money on the franchise fee. It's a one-time fee. That money is gone by the time you become a franchisee. The sales team gets paid out of that, your training is paid, some of the infrastructure of the organization is paid with that fee. That is not where a franchisor makes money. A franchisor makes money on royalties. And the only way a franchisor makes money on royalties is if your top-line revenue is as high as it can possibly be. And that's where the win-win comes in franchising. It's in the franchisor's best interest to make sure you are as successful as you can possibly be, because the more money you make, the more money the franchisor makes. And a franchisor that understands that this is where they need to focus their time and effort on is a good franchise organization to become involved in. The third fee that is often applied is advertising and marketing. That's the one fee that if I talk to franchisees is the fee that most of them are unhappy with. Advertising and marketing fee is usually between 0.5% to 2% of top-line revenue. The problem or the challenge with that fee is that you have no control over that money. It goes into a big pot for national advertising, and it could hit your market or it would not hit your market. It is getting a little bit better with online SEO, social media efforts, website development, because a lot of that is paid out of that national marketing fund as well. But there might be print campaigns or radio campaigns being run in a different market, because that's a market of bigger importance to the franchisor, and you might not see any of that money in your market. Estimated investment levels. So first we have the franchise fee. Like we said, one-time fee payable when you sign your agreement, payable in cash, non-refundable. Between $15,000 and $50,000 is a good range for franchise fees. Franchise fees don't increase with the level of overall investment. It is totally dependent on the franchise organization. The average that I see is about $35,000 for a franchise. It doesn't matter if it's brick and mortar or home-based. Now, if you look at home-based franchises, and those are franchises that don't need a retail location, you don't have customers walking in the door like a hair salon or a tutoring center or a food restaurant, but you could service people at their homes. Repair and maintenance is a great example. You don't need an office or a storefront for repair and maintenance because you service your customers at their home or their office. Cleaning services, in-home tutoring, dog sitting, a lot of those are home-based businesses because, again, you don't need an office. So for home-based businesses, you're looking at an investment of $50,000 to about $150,000. That includes the franchise fee, and then the bulk of the remainder is working capital and marketing. Now, if you look at brick and mortar franchises, so franchises that require a lease, a build out, and equipment, you're looking at a minimum of $200,000, and that would be a very, very small brick and mortar location. Well, the most often asked question is, how do I fund this? So if I'm interested in, and again, franchise or non-franchise, how do I fund my business? Now, on the franchise side, there's a couple of options. Cash savings investments. Obviously, that would be the easiest way to go about funding your franchise, and very few of us have that amount of cash sitting in a bank account just ready to invest into a business. The next option is retirement funds. The SBA has initiated a vehicle about 24 months ago now to be able to use some of your 401k money and roll it over into a C Corp, which makes it liquid and you can access it immediately to pay your bills, pay for your marketing, and even pay yourself a salary. Home equity line of credit. If you own your home or you have a second home, then that is an option that a lot of my clients are looking into these days. Franchisor funded loans. There's very few franchisors out there right now that provide loans, but there's some, and a lot of them are funding either vehicles or equipment, but those can be found, not a lot, like I said, these days, but some of them still do. SBA loans, I've seen very little move in the SBA area. I talk to bankers every day, and I'm told they're lending. I haven't seen a lot of it, especially for home-based businesses. It is challenging because if you don't have collateral and you're looking for working capital, and it is a startup, it just becomes very, very complicated. And then that leaves us with conventional loans. One of the things that I help with my clients is I'm not a lending expert, but I have great resources in town. If it's bankers or brokers that I refer my clients to, that really look at the portfolio and say, what are your best options? And then source those options for you. Let's talk about a successful franchisee. Who would be a good franchise owner? You have to have a small business owner mindset. Franchise or not, as a franchise owner, you're a small business owner. You're legally and financially responsible for your business. On a day-to-day basis, you're the one wearing just as many hats as every other small business owner, from marketing to staffing to operations to finances to HR. You're a small business owner. The franchisor will not provide you with a list of clients. So if anybody ever was told that that is the case, a franchisor will not, when you sign up, give you a list of prospective clients that are dying to buy from you. You're the one that has to go out and do that work just like everybody else, but you get the tools to help you do that and the strategies and the procedures to help you do that. As a successful franchisees, use those resources. Franchisees that struggle are the ones that think they know it better. Why buy a franchise if you think you know it better? Use those resources that a franchisor provides you. They've been tested. There's a reason why they're in place. And yes, there's always improvement. There's always a way to maybe improve on those processes. But especially at the beginning, use those resources. That's what you're paying for on a monthly basis. You have to have an appetite for risk. Again, yes, there's reduced risk, but again, every business is risky and business ownership is risky, and you have to have that appetite for risk in order to own a business or a franchise. Business ownership skills, and that is something that is very important. A lot of people I talk to think about still, this is what I do, I'm good at this particular thing. You have to take yourself out of the producer role and put yourself into the role of owner. That means managing people, that means communicating, networking, selling, marketing yourself, hiring, training, retaining staff. Very seldomly is a business owner the actual producer of fixing chairs, of fixing toilets, of going out and training dogs. Very often, the business owner is the one that is growing the business and has staff that performs the day-to-day work. This is just an overview of franchise industries. And it's small font, and I'm aware of that, but it gives you an idea of how many industries are franchised to date. Now at this point, we have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. I would rather not go through the case studies because I think it'd be a lot more interactive and beneficial to do that with the panel. So are there questions that I can answer at this point? The question was, what are the hottest franchises today? And that is always, it's one of the most common questions I get asked, and my response is usually, it very much depends on who you are and what you're looking for. If I look at the market and demographics and people that I'm talking to, there's 5 categories that are doing extremely well right now. The first and foremost is in-home care. Senior in-home care is one of the biggest and largest growing market segments right now. Franchised and non-franchised, a lot of those are franchised. They're home-based businesses. You're sending caretakers to people's homes so they don't have to move into assisted living or hospice. That is probably the biggest segment. It's growing tremendously. The baby boomers are getting to that age, and it's just on the cusp of exploding. Just in Denver in the last 18 months, I've seen about 24 to 25 new brands move into the market in that category alone. The second one is childcare and child education. It is a huge market that a lot of people are not aware of is franchised, and that is learning centers, in-home tutoring, nanny services, child enrichment programs, if it's arts or sports. The more schools are cutting, the more businesses are taking that opportunity to create small businesses around that industry. Third is repair and maintenance. Not new, not sexy, but it's one of those things that if something breaks, it needs to be fixed, and very few of us have the time or the ability to do it ourselves. And again, those are home-based businesses and run the gamut from very, very niche screen repair to broad handyman repair to designing and creating decks to commercial cleaning and restoration. So that's a very, very big category. The fourth one is pet care. And it's not just because we're in Colorado, but pet care has grown tremendously, even over the last 2 years. Doggy daycares, dog walking, dog training, pet grooming, dog agility parks. I mean, those have grown tremendously. And then the fifth is health and wellness. And that has massage, hair salons, spas. And again, those have really not been affected as much by the economy as we thought we would, because people might cut on their vacation, but they still try and get in an hour or two of their alone time or of that time that they need to relax and get ready for the next week. So those are the big 5 right now.
So I've spent my money on my franchise fee. I've paid my fees for whatever the infrastructure I need. What should I expect? And I'm paying my 2 to whatever % a month. What should I personally expect on my net? And how long should I expect to be at the business before I pay back all of those fees?
Great question, and not a simple answer. It very much depends on the business model and what you're looking for. So let me try and break this into different responses for you. The first one is, it very much depends on what you're looking for. I have clients that are looking to be very active owners in the business 40 to 60 hours a week with the intention of growing that business really quickly, growing the infrastructure, hiring staff so they can step away in year 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, and really have the business work on their behalf. Some of those, and those are mainly home-based businesses. So I'm not talking about brick and mortar and infrastructure. Some of those businesses are able to cash flow break even within 6 to 9 months. If you look at the investment, you might look at 3 to 5 years. And depending on the industry, some of them provide very attractive 6-figure incomes. Again, it's a very, very difficult question to answer. It really depends on each individual franchisor. If you're looking at buying a business and immediately managing a manager, which is usually the case in a massage place, a hair salon, because very seldomly is the owner a stylist, but a business person. You're looking at a longer period, obviously, of break even because you have immediate fixed costs that you're covering with lease and payroll and insurance and all of those. But there is even brick and mortar locations that cash flow within 3 to 6 months. Does that answer your question? And I can't be any more specific, unfortunately.
No, I was just curious. I used to own Nick and Willie's, take and bake pizza franchises. Northern Colorado did the distributor thing in Nebraska. And I remember walking in there on the first day and they said it's a nickel and dime business. So you've got to watch every single penny, nickel and dime going out the door. But I didn't know in that particular model you're 8 to 10% if you're operating efficiently.
Right.
If there are franchises out there, non-restaurant specific, where you're looking at potential margins of 15, 20, maybe even 25%.
Yes, you are. And food is probably the most difficult category to get into. I don't do any food on my consulting side, and that is one of the reasons. If you're not from the food industry and you own even a food franchise, like you said, it's every nickel. And if you don't have that attention, you don't have the knowledge, your margins are dwindling really, really quickly. And there's very little you can do about it. With inventory that spoils and hourly workers and putting that all together, it's a very, very complicated business to run. So I think food is probably the most challenging. And if I look at break even, I would not even say 3 to probably 5 to 7 years minimum for a very, very profitable and well-run food franchise.
So you're quick to say what's the most difficult to make succeed. What areas tend to be the most easily successful?
Well, I think, again, it's a question of finding the right fit between the owner and the model. So looking at you as the owner and your skills, and then really finding a business model that lends itself to your skills. And I think a lot of times when people buy franchises, they get excited about something and don't spend enough time thinking about that fit. I think a home-based business is definitely easier to run than a retail and brick and mortar. Just based on the fact that while you're working 60, 80 hours a week, initially, you control most of the outcome. Whereas with a brick and mortar from day one, you have to have staff in that location that you have to trust with not only money, but customer service and everything else. So I think from a business model perspective, a home-based business, while it is hard work, is the easier model to start with.
You work with people who try to put them into franchises. Do you ever work on the other side of the coin when somebody has a successful business and they want to turn it into a franchise operation? Do you also do that type of work?
I don't, but what I do with those, I speak to a lot of companies that are thinking of franchising their idea or product or service. I'm not the person that will help them with their operation manuals and legal documents and their financials. I have great contacts in town that I refer them to that do nothing else. But what I do with those very often is sit down with them for an hour and look at their idea from the franchisee's side. And just say, why would I pay you $30,000 franchise fee? Why would I pay you 5% royalties? What do I get back in return? Do you have a support system? Can I see your marketing plan? Do you have ROI? Do Do you have proven successful open locations? So I approach it from the side of the individual franchisee to help them look at their idea from the perspective of their new potential strategic business partners.
After a year, you decide this isn't for you. What are you risking with the franchise or with monetary or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, for employees, do you have to utilize the employees in this franchisor's medical system? Do they pay any part of the G&A of your employees?
Let me answer the second question first. Very few franchisors provide healthcare or benefits for your employees. Some larger franchise organizations might have a PEO that you can take advantage of, but usually it is you as the franchise owner, it's your discretion and or responsibility to provide those to your employees. So very often they're not tied to the franchisor. And even if the franchisor offers a PEO, it would be under your LLC. So you buy in as the business owner. It is not on the behalf of the franchisor. If after a year you decide this is not working, I hate it, I like to do something else, I'm moving, whatever it is, when you sign a franchise agreement, a standard agreement is usually a 10-year agreement. Very few franchisors do 5-year agreements, most of them do 10-year agreements. When and if you'd like to get out of a franchise, you can put your business on the market just like any other small business owner. Meaning you put the price on your business. You can contact local brokers to help you sell your business. You contact your franchisor because very often your neighboring franchisees might be interested in picking up your territory and enlarging their business. That is usually the easiest sell. But say you're the only one in Denver, you would still contact your franchisor because they are able to publicize it out to people like myself. When I work with clients, I have a list of resales that come on the market every week. And then you can work with your business broker. The only key difference is that the franchisor has to approve the new buyer. And when your buyer becomes the new franchise owner, he signs a new franchise agreement, a transfer fee is due. And it's usually 1/3 of the franchise fee. And as the seller, you would factor that into your sale price. Now again, depending on your market and how well your business is doing, there might be enough negotiation going on that you're actually not being able to cover that transfer fee. But usually you would factor it into your sale price, put it on the market for that amount of money, and then you're able to go ahead and find prospective buyers for your business.
Rich with contract. It looks like the 5 categories that you recommended is the house that those are all home-based businesses, which I see the health and wellness, I think massage envy, brick and mortar, going for the most part, the business work for the franchisees, contractors for employees, I think of a maintenance worker who just goes out to a job, works the job, and gets done the hour.
So yeah, two answers to that question. Yes, the 5 out of the 5 categories, all of those have home-based and brick-and-mortar opportunities. Even in-home healthcare has, like you might have seen Sarah Care around town, that is a day spa, and that's a franchise. So every category out of those 5 that I've mentioned has brick-and-mortar opportunities within their segment. Contractors or employees, very dependent on the model. Some franchisors will request and require you to have employees only. Some have a combination of employees and contractors, others have contractors only. It depends on the industry and it depends on the franchisor. So when you look at an opportunity, one of the validation things you need to go through to build your financial model is understanding, are those employees or contractors? Because obviously it impacts your bottom line tremendously if they're employees.
All right, so we're going to take a break now, get set up for the panel, so please give it up for Ruth Garcia. Thank you. So we're going to start with our panel. So this part of the presentation is you get a chance to ask questions of the panel. We're going to have each panelist introduce themselves, so they'll talk a little bit about their background, so you have a sense of what they contribute to the conversation. And again, we're focusing on entrepreneurship, right? So as an entrepreneur, why did you, buy a franchise? How do you operate your business? How is it different than the way, maybe you're running your business if you have an independent business? So that's what we're going to focus on here. And we have everyone up. So we'll start with, who has a mic in their hand can start. So to introduce yourself, your franchise, and then a little bit about your background. We'll get started with Q&A.
Good evening. My name is Curtis Craze. I own a deck building company. My wife and I, Ann, own a deck building company called Archidec. Company's been around for 35 years, based out of Richmond, Virginia. Prior to buying the business, I worked at General Electric for 20 years. And the most recent role I had at GE was I managed locomotive costs, life cycle costs for locomotives, about 5,000 in North America. So a little bit of a shift. I grew up in a construction home, but I'm now back into it. So it's a great business, and I look forward to talking more about that.
So my name is Ann, and my background was in internet marketing. So I spent 12 years doing various internet marketing with various companies. The last I was a product director for Dex, dexknows.com, the online yellow pages. So.
Hi, hello, good evening. My name's Tara Hardcastle, and I am a franchise owner for the franchise known as College Nannies and Tutors. And prior to purchasing my franchise, I was in a patent licensing company. I was working for a patent licensing company doing global, not consulting, but global auditing, if you will, running that division. And prior to that, in my previous life, I was a CPA for a public accounting firm. So I have a financial background as well as a management and operations background.
Besides owning RG2, and I'm just passing around my handouts of Franchising 101, I also own a franchise called Rooster's Men's Grooming Center, and it is an upscale barbershop. We do haircuts for men and boys, and my location is down on University and Orchard, and we opened May 13th. So I'm not only consulting with my clients on helping them find a good match, but I also own a brick and mortar franchise, and I'm committed to opening 3 more locations over the next 5 years.
So I'll start off with the first couple questions, and as you think of it, just raise your hand, and if you can please introduce yourself so we can get that, and stand up so that we can get it on the video. So, you all obviously didn't buy your franchises right out of college. So I would like to know what happened, and this is an age thing, because this is not a market, right? College kids don't buy franchises. What is it, to clarify myself, what is it that why did you lean towards a franchise versus starting your own business? So you had a career, you each talked about your career, and then you made a decision, right, to leave the career, or the career left you. You had a choice. You had a path towards franchising, you had a path potentially to start your own business, or go get another job. Why did you choose franchising?
Because GE laid me off. But prior to that, I had always been interested in running my own business, and I had at one point, while working at GE, had a masonry business, but I figured my body wouldn't last very long if I kept that up, so I went back to crunching numbers for GE. But what had driven me to the point of buying a franchise was being laid off March of '09. I worked pretty hard to try to find a role, even relocating. It wasn't coming together. And I sat down, looked at all the options, and since we've always kind of dreamt of owning something, we decided to buy a business. And I was fortunate enough to meet Ruth Garcia at a networking event, and that's become history now. So that's kind of what got me into it. I lost my role at General Electric and was tired of hunting for another job.
My story is actually very similar. I actually lost my job as well about 1.5 years ago. I was at corporate America, was ready to move on past my corporate job, but I did lose my job at that point, and unlike you, I found out a few weeks after losing my job that I was pregnant with my second son. So, so at that point in time, I really did some soul searching, and I too ran into Ruth at a networking event, and had always had a desire to own my own business. And going back to your comment earlier about college kids don't purchase franchises, I tried. Yes, I did try. I tried to purchase a franchise. I was very naive as to the cost involved, but I was very eager. So it's something that I looked at, years ago, and came full circle, met Ruth, we sat down and really started talking about kind of where I was in my life and family and what was important to myself and my husband, which is family, flexibility, pursuing a dream. And that's really why, at the end of the day, I ended up purchasing a franchise.
Why did you pick up your franchise?
Well, my story is a little bit different, obviously, than Tara and Curtis's as well. And the fact that, for me, one of the exciting things of helping my clients find opportunities was for me to learn more about what's out there in the market. And my husband and I have always looked at business ownership and wanting to own multiple businesses at a certain point in time and really realizing that dream of being entrepreneurs. And I was able to see firsthand what was coming into the market, trends in franchising, new concepts coming up. So last summer, we sat down and made that conscious decision to say that now is the time for us to really make this dream a reality and find an opportunity where, differently to both of them, it is not an owner-operator, but a manage-the-manager model, meaning I run my consulting practice and my husband still works, and we have a manager that's running our store on a day-to-day basis. And that's how we started and made that decision to buy into Roosters.
The other thing I'd like to, you talk in your profile about, matching the lifestyle, really looking at the individual as well as the franchise and the fit. So, a lot of people look at, skills. You had skills in growing up and maybe you had some education background or something. But what about the franchisor attracted you to them? Did you look at the core values, their mission? Did you interview other people and did they share your values as well as it was a good business opportunity?
I think when we met with Ruth, which was great, to even know that service was available, because we actually would look online at various franchise business opportunities, and it was very hard to look at them and go, well, is that a good one or a bad one, or we don't know much about their background. And what was great about Ruth is she looked at both of our backgrounds, mine being internet marketing, Curtis's being operations, and came back with 5 different businesses for us to evaluate. And we spent 3 to 4 weeks actually picking 2 or 3 that we really looked into heavily. There's a process that you go with each franchisor, really looking at the numbers, the revenue, what the potential is in the marketplace, all of that. And so what was great is being able to evaluate it from that perspective. And I think what was interesting to me is we both love coffee, so we thought, well, great, we should open up a coffee franchise because we both love it. But that doesn't always mean it's the best one for you. And that was what Ruth kind of helped us delineate and evaluate. And when she heard that Curtis had owned a masonry business, she goes, have you heard of a deck franchise? I can imagine everybody in this room would say, I have never heard of a deck outdoor living franchise. I mean, it's just not a common, and I was thinking, really, an outdoor decking franchise? And we were so impressed with the leadership and the opportunity here in this marketplace that it just kind of ended up being a good fit for us overall, especially for Curtis, just because he enjoys it so much. So I think that's it.
My situation obviously is very similar. It's a very similar process. I would say that the one thing that Ruth is especially good at is really coming in, getting to know who you are, your background, your interests, not only for yourself, but, they're in partnership together. They work the business together. My husband still has his corporate job, but also, understanding my husband's skills, what his interests were as well, even though he wasn't necessarily going to be running the business, but knowing that you had to have that support system as well as a family. Ruth was very good at doing that, and again, I think you brought 4 concepts to the table. I took 3 of the 4, so she did a very good job. I couldn't let go of 2 of those 3 for a very long time until she just said, enough is enough, okay? But at the end of the day, again, we have a love for dogs. We have 3 dogs. It was between college nannies and tutors and a dog, pet grooming franchise. And at the end of the day, what it boiled down to really was the relationship that I felt that I had established throughout the due diligence process and the validation process. There were, I don't know, how long did we go at that? Months. Several months of phone calls, and that is by far the most important part of the process, is really making as many phone calls as you possibly can. And of course, the franchisor is going to give you a list of half a dozen franchisees that they recommend that you call. But what's important to do is also go above that half a dozen and call another half a dozen that, you know, maybe wasn't on that preferred list. Talk to those franchisees as well. If you're getting, you know, similar stories, if you're getting a similar sense of support from the franchisor, you're pretty much guaranteed you're working with a good company. But the other thing that I would say that's very, very important from my perspective is not only understanding and getting a sense of, you know, can I work with this franchisor company, but when you're having those validation calls, are these people that you can partner with as a networking group? Can you rely on these other franchisees? You know, do they have similar interests, similar values? You know, can you call upon them and vice versa as a team and as a network of business owners? I think that for me was very important. I felt really good about, you know, all of the franchisees that I spoke with at College Nannies and Tutors.
I picked Roosters for a variety of reasons, but going back to your question, for me the most important thing was trust with the franchisor. I knew the management team. The management team owns 6 franchise concepts. So I had worked with that team before with other clients, so I knew who they were. I'd met them in person. And for me, there is only so much number crunching and validating that you can do, and you will never be sure that this is going to work. For me, it came down to meeting them in person and shaking their hand and looking them in the eyes and saying, I trust you, I like you, I can go out with you for a drink after work and have, you know, see you as a friend and really see that we have the same goals in mind and you know, have each other's back. That was for me the most important thing. And, you know, that Roosters has really, you know, proven that that's, you know, been a good decision so far.
Yeah, if you're going to put $30 or $40 or $50,000 on the line, why a franchise where you have to build the whole customer base as opposed to buying, maybe there's so many businesses out there where somebody's falling short, they're horrible at marketing, or they've lost their partner and they can't run things, or whatever, where you know, opportunities where you've already got a viable business and you can see in short order you could perhaps make it more successful. So why did you look at those 2 choices and why the one that you chose?
I think, you know, when you look to buy a business, I think it's usually going to be more than $50,000. I mean, usually you're paying for the revenue or things of that nature above and beyond. I know for me, when we researched a lot of, you know, doing it on ourselves or on our own or not, what I liked about our franchise is the marketing, because I was coming from a marketing background. So when we did a visit, I was like, wow, this is impressive. Just the marketing material alone. I know what it costs to get things printed, what it took, the efforts of all that. We had our website up in a day. We had leads within a week from coming home after training. Very difficult to get your website up and running, you know, all of those things that you have to do and have to worry about, when really what you want to do is actually immediately go into sales. You can definitely look at other businesses. It just, for us, it had a proven system. There was a lot of support that came with that. Typically, if you're going to buy a small business, not sure how much support you're going to get from that previous owner. You might for a certain amount of time, and then after that you're kind of on your own. And you have to evaluate how much of a brand they have in the marketplace. And that can be, you know, that's kind of subjective, to be honest. They can tell you they have a 2,000 customer base. It's hard to know, you know, until you're in it. So that was just sort of, for us, just knowing, it's kind of it felt like a sure deal. Like if you're going to invest, and we had to do it quickly because we were both out of work, and you had to make, I mean, it was sort of like, we have to make this happen. That's what kind of did it for us.
I think I would add to that, speed and efficiency, as Ann had pointed out. But I think one other element that maybe is ringing a little bit truer up here, I never thought of it until now, is that we both came from structured environments of corporate life. And so we weren't serial entrepreneurs, and we aren't people that just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to start a new business. So the franchising side of it gave us a bit of comfort, but you can also own our own business. And for my side on the operations and sales, it gave me a tool that I could sell right away versus I need someone to help me. I want to build a deck, so who's going to buy my first deck? And then I'll prove that I can build it. I don't have any tools really to prove that I could build a deck, only that my history, right? So and I think it was ease of business ownership, and also it has a structure that I could follow, and it was speed and efficiency. So
Same for me as well, as far as why franchising over just purchasing a business again. I felt that the initial investment was much smaller and more of a guarantee of, not of success, but it felt like a safer investment to invest in a franchise fee, knowing that there was a brand, a company that had been around for a number of years doing this versus a mom and pop down the road that you just don't know, what even the reputation is in the marketplace necessarily, because the reputation, the brand, is really what you're buying outside of the operations, the manuals. For me, one of the big things that I purchased was a proprietary database system, because I deal with a lot of different people every single day and tracking that. So that was huge for me. And again, it's just the support, the operations, and the system. I was used to systems. In my prior job, I was developing and building systems and operations, and I put process procedure in place. I initiated and went through a number of SAS 70 audits, those sorts of things. So I was used to following process and procedure as well. I didn't want to go through that process of building everything from scratch again. I wanted to really get into business ownership, get into it as quickly as possible, and follow a proven system.
Based on those comments, Ruth, do any significant percentage of your clients come from people who have prior small business experience as opposed to more of the larger company experience?
I have a combination of both. I work with a good amount of small business owners. They come into that process with a slightly different perspective. One of my clients is he's a very entrepreneurial person. He's owned multiple businesses before. He came to me specifically looking for an entry into the elder care segment, knowing that he had no industry experience in that industry, but also knowing that this is where the biggest growth opportunity is in the market. So for him, buying a franchise wasn't so much about the system and the support as being able to break into a market without the industry expertise. So that is where small business owners, look at that with a slightly different perspective. The third category are investors, and those are a lot of times business owners that are looking to diversify their portfolio of businesses and are looking for passive ownerships or manage-the-manager models. And again, it is breaking into a market or a trend or an industry where you are able to get into as a franchise owner, and it'd be a lot harder to do that by yourself without having that expertise.
Do the franchisors have a revenue commitment from you? In other words, do you have a line that you have to meet? And if not, do they yell at you?
Well, I haven't gotten yelled at yet, but we've been blessed with some really good years. There is, and it's a trend with Architect, that if they track sales, and all of us know where every franchise office is on sales on a monthly basis. But if they see a trend or there's non-performance, I think that they bring you in and chat with you, see what's going on, if they can help, and if they can't help, then it's typically a mutual agreement, is my understanding. It's rare that people don't know what's going on, and it's just based on performance. But it's an X amount of dedicated expenses for the operations within the headquarters. And if they don't feel like they're getting at least that taken care of, then, I mean, I think that's pretty small. I don't know what it is. I think it's maybe 30,000 a year or something like that, so.
I wouldn't say that there's anything explicit in the agreement that I sign as it relates to that, but certainly, you know, there's minimum royalty fees at a certain point, I believe in year 2, that kick in. So if you get to that point where you're only paying minimum royalties, I would expect a similar conversation is going to take place. You know, and they're going to bring you in, talk to you, you know, provide additional training, those sorts of things, kind of assess really, you know, what's going on with you and your business. Are you the, you know, is it time for you to fire yourself? You know, I'm 2 months, really 2 months into this thing, and I'm firing myself already in one particular area. So I'm not real good about the data entry, so I'm firing myself. So really just, you know, assessing things from that perspective and, you know, seeing if they can help with training, that sort of thing. And then I'm sure that, you know, down the road, if there was still non-performance, there would be further discussions about, you know, what the next steps would be. But there's nothing explicit.
So what I've heard about franchising is that a big part of it, and you've alluded to this, is the other franchisees. How, I know some of you you're newer, but how much are you relying on them? Like there's usually like an annual convention, or there probably now there's probably the ability to use a portal and, you know, a forum and discussion. How much are you relying on them, or how much do you anticipate that you will rely on the other more experienced or, you know, more vetted out franchisees in your network?
I think that's a great balance between Ann and myself. I'm typically get bruised and learn my lesson, and Ann's one ask questions, and then so you don't have to get bruised. So she can answer her side of it, but my side is there definitely is a portal. I relied on the support of architect franchisees around the nation a lot more in my first few months or first year of business. I haven't been on the portal for a couple months, but we're in the heat of our season too, so I'm just trying to stay above water in some places. But definitely it's a great resource, and have created some really good friendships, and people will pick up the phone as soon as I call them, regardless of what time it is.
It's definitely, I mean, I think that's one of the benefits of the franchise system in general, and one that we liked is, you know, as Tara just pointed out as well. And I think you can, I mean, from a marketing perspective, ask them what's working, what hasn't worked. You can share marketing ideas. Operationally, how we manage carpenters, to how you go to the building department, more efficient ways to do that. I mean, it's been really great to be able to kind of draw on those resources. And then the other benefit is we have a regional kind of manager, I would say, that manages a bunch of our, just this area in general. And he's been great as well, in terms of, he comes out, you know, once a quarter and kind of sees how things are going, areas that we're struggling with, and ways to help us be, you know, create more efficiency. So it definitely a one-year conference, and then a regional conference, ways for people to get together.
We too have the annual conference that's going to be coming up in January, so this will be my first time to attend that. But we also have the portal, the blogs, those sorts of things. And in addition to that, we have a franchise advisory council, and it's broken down by region. So I have access to monthly conference calls with a group of franchisees, and all of them have been in the system for, I'd say, 4 or 5 years. So I'm, you know, fortunate to be in a group of speaking with a group of individuals on a monthly basis that really have been through the growing pains, can provide some real solid advice as to what's working, what's not. And I feel like I have a really good group of people that I can turn to, pick up the phone and call any of those franchisees in that group. And then in addition to that, there's also a group of multi-unit owners, so franchisees that have purchased multiple territories. I've purchased 2 territories that have calls as well. I believe that's monthly as well. So I have another group of franchisees that I can tap into as well. So a lot of franchisee support.
I'll just quickly add on to that. With Roosters, there's 5 owners in the Denver market. So that's slightly different already. Roosters sold out the entire Denver metro market within 8 weeks. It's a slightly different situation to say there's a big group already, there's 5 owners, there's 14 stores to be opened, and we talk every day. We as owners talk every single day. If it's, hey, where did you buy this great banner, to can I borrow your tablecloth for that convention, to we went to the Rocky Mountain Bridal Show all day yesterday, shared costs for the booth and mained it between the 5 owners and had a blast. But I mean, this is where you're not alone. And especially for me, again, as a new owner, we share so much information. We share our numbers, like, did you have a good Sunday, a bad Sunday? Are you overstaffed? Are you understaffed? I was understaffed in June, so Arvada sent me their barbers for a day. Parker was understaffed last week. I sent my manager over to help them on a Saturday. And that's what I mean with community. Like, you really have a support network that, you know, as a small business owner, you often wish you'd have.
When you look at franchise opportunities, what are the red flags that you should look for?
You want to go first?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sure we're about to say the same thing.
I don't think I ever shared this with Ruth. I may have, but I hadn't. I did. No, but there was one firm that I talked with, and they wanted me to fly. How was it? They wanted me. I wanted to review. There was a local company that had this business, and I wanted to visit with them and learn about their business and learn a lot more on. Again, I'm hands-on. I learned through getting bruises, so I just called them up and said, "Hey, can I spend a day with you on your business?" And while I don't think I ever called that company and told them, you know, the headquarters. She did. This lady did, and he said, "Why did you do that? He's not going to buy the business." And she told me that, so I followed up with him and said, "Yeah, you know what? Investment level is a little bit high for me." He says, "Well, that's because you rode around with her." Well, that was a red flag for me. There's one other one that kind of wanted me to fly out and sign. I don't know if it was with Ruth. It may have been I called out before I talked with Ruth, and that was another red flag for me, that you don't even know me and you want me to sign on a piece of paper just to get my $50,000 or $60,000, whatever that was. So typically it's that. It's like a personality conflict or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. Those that just want you to fly out and sign on the dotted line, run. But the one that sticks in my head is through the validation process. That's really where you're going to do most of your learning. Like Ruth said before, you can crunch numbers all day long. I'm a CPA by trade. I crunched numbers till they drove me crazy. It just doesn't matter at the end of the day what the numbers look like, because they're going to be what you want them to be. At the end of the day, you're going to work as hard as you need to work. But when you're doing these validation calls, if you're hearing a consistent theme of, you know, there's a lot of people that's just not real happy in the system, and when you pick up the phone and the first thing the guy says, "Oh, you're doing a validation call," put the phone down and run as fast as you can. That was a red flag.
Yeah, and I think I'll add to, all of those are very valid red flags, and it boils down to if you go through that process, a lot of people don't know what you don't know. So you don't know the steps that you're expected to take and what is expected in terms of time frames, how many people should you call, what do you ask. If you don't know what you don't know, a franchisor that is really just trying to get you to sign is going to push you through that process, try and cut corners, make sure you sign as soon as you can. And that's, for me, that's the biggest red flag. If a franchisor that I work with would ever be pushy towards one of my clients, that's usually when we pull the plug. Because you need to take the time, and you're not cutting corners, and we're not going to not do this or skip a step. That's, for me, the biggest red flag.
You talked about the reasons how you can get a franchisee. Is there a reason why a franchisor would reject a franchise application?
There's a lot of reasons why a franchisor would reject a franchise application. First of all, is money. I mean, there's always the qualifier to say, are you able to afford that business model, and do you have enough savings to sustain your lifestyle and live your life at the same time as you're building your business? The second most important thing, and I think they're just as important, is business ownership skills. Every franchisor interviews you as a candidate to say, do you have the skills necessary to run this business on a day-to-day basis? Do you have the experience, the skills, the passion? Are you willing to learn? And do you fit into our organization? I always say it's a two-way interview process. When you look at a franchise opportunity, you're interviewing the franchisor and the franchisor is interviewing you. And it needs to be a mutual agreement that both of you agree that you're a good fit for each other.
What's the percentage of rejections? Do they
I
publish
don't know.
that?
I don't know what the percentage is. One of the things when I work with my clients, when we get to the point that I introduce them to opportunities, I know that they're a good fit. You know, that's what I do. So I've not had the issue of having a candidate be rejected. But I know it happens. You know, you go online, you fill out a form, you start talking to a franchisor. Very often both sides suddenly realize that this is really not a good fit.
I wondered if you know any of the personal backstory of who's successful when it's like a single person versus couples buying franchises. And with couples, I'm sort of imagining that there might be, in one case, a couple who's might have less conflict because they're buying something that has its own set of rules, and they can always point to that third party instead of at one another, finger pointing over differences. And for some other couple, it may be that's an added stressor to have somebody's rules. And I just wondered if anybody knows what the numbers are as far as who's successful and who it makes lives easier for couples and singles, and who it complicates things or creates more conflict, more higher levels of divorce, things like that.
Well, I'm just going to take that up on the high level and then, you know, ask Ann and Curtis. They're the best example as a couple running a business, and my husband and I do too. I don't have rates or percentages for you. What I look at when I meet with couples or business partners is to say, if and when you buy this business, who is who? Are you the marketing arm and are you the operations arm? Are you HR and finance? How do you divide those responsibilities so you're not having that constant friction, but have areas of responsibility that you are the final decision maker on to avoid those conflicts? And again, it then really depends on the couple and how they can work it out. In my case, I'm operations and marketing, and my husband is finance. So yes, we talk about the business all the time, but we also know that if there is a final decision to be made, it is either him or me, depending on what that decision, you know, is. But I'm sure, you know, Ann and Curtis live it every day. I'm sure they can share how they've approached it.
Yeah, that is the best avenue, is that our skill sets were fairly different, mine being in marketing and his being on the operations side, so that's helped a lot. There are times when we do have conflict of, you know, overlapping, and it's just something you have to work out. I mean, it's definitely not easy. It's you know, it has its challenges, but I think for us, we see the end goal. We're both going for the same vision. And I think if you both have that similar, as a couple have a similar end goal, that's what helps. If one doesn't, or thought they were getting into something that now all of a sudden they're like, whoa, I was not asking for this, I think conflict can definitely intervene. But, you know, for us, it was, you know, we both were in it, and you know, we've definitely had some challenges and probably more fights than maybe had we stayed in our corporate jobs. But I think ultimately we're very happy and feel very lucky to really, I mean, we have the ability to really go beyond the income we would have ever made via our corporate jobs. So I think that just for our family and all of that, you know, it's been good. You want to say something?
Sure. I always have something to say. I think to Ann's point, we're both so passionate about our business, and it's more, I think it's more driven just because of what we want in the future, that that passion sometimes gets a little fuzzy, and we just don't overlook you know, what's at stake, or not necessarily what's at stake, well, what we're talking about, because we see it that, or at least myself, I see that if this decision is not successful, we're all going to fail. And it's not reality, but this is how I kind of walk through it. But balanced life, I share a quick maybe story about when I have three older daughters, and I have we have one young son. And I had always dreamt while working at GE that I could spend breakfast with my kids, and I could never do that, ever. And only because I was after the corporate job, right? Every morning I have breakfast with Kyle, and every morning I get him ready for school and help him with all that balance. So the arguments that we may have really kind of go to the side when I can spend, you know, I can actually hit my dream of spending time with my boy. So it's kind of a nice balance.
Social media, you know, is obviously hot, and I just read today that Naked Pizza grew in their investor success through Twitter and generated 6,000 investment leads, of which a quarter of them have invested, including Kraft Foods. How are your franchises using social media, and how do you contribute to that conversation if you do? So 2 pieces. How does your franchisor using social media, and then how do you get to add your voice to it, because it's really ultimately about your conversation with the customer?
Our franchisor, the marketing person in charge, is very, very progressive. So all the training that we have at the annual conference is around social media and what we can do. In some cases, they have found some national companies to help us, and so it's up to each franchise to take advantage of that or not. What's difficult, Twitter is like a medium that's immediate, right? So if Curtis is on a job location, hey, we just built this huge retaining wall, 160 lineal feet, check it out. And then, you know, immediate, it's like, what are you doing now? It's immediate. So it's more in his realm, because I'm not, you know, it's not something that I get involved in as much. And we do it in some cases, and in some cases not as much. Blogging, we're beginning to do blogging a lot more on a weekly basis. The challenge, as a lot of business owners know, is just the consistency of social media, and you have to be consistent. And that is very difficult when you're balancing so many other priorities that you have. So we've begun to outsource a lot of it. To be perfectly honest, our first year, I didn't really want to do a whole lot of social media because we didn't have anything to show. And we are still trying to figure out the conversation that you have with the customer. And then, you know, as time has gone on, we're starting to get more and more involved. Facebook, we have a Facebook page, but again, it has gone by the wayside, and so we'll probably outsource that as well, just so that we can keep up to date, because we know that that's sort of where the next lead flow comes from. For us, we've had such a high lead flow that I honestly haven't wanted to turn on the faucet, because Curtis can barely handle the lead flow that we have, because right now we only have one sales rep, which is him. So it's sort of like, once you dial that faucet on, then, you know, you got to be ready. And as a marketer, you know, you paid for that lead in some way, form, or fashion, and so I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money if we can't even service the lead flow that we have right now. So that's...
And I'll only add one piece of that and why it's important, and maybe all of you as business owners know this already. If you have so much lead flow you can't answer them, it's actually a detractor of your business. And so it's a balance for us, and that was one thing we had to learn pretty quickly, that the name of your business and the reputation of your business is hinging on whether you're going to make a sale to that customer or not. It's important that you follow through every single one of them. And if you can't do that, then while it might sound weird, you just don't turn on so much the lead flow. And I'll say it again, we've been blessed with lots of work, and we're ready to move on, but nonetheless, you got to control that faucet, to Ann's point.
Our franchisor also is very active in the Facebook page, Twittering, that sort of thing. I'm just, honestly, my franchise is in its infancy stage right now. Again, you know, really 2 months into this, and I'm a one-man show right now that I just haven't even been able to think about you know, staying on top of that. My business is really, in my mind, built on relationships and referrals, and going to, you know, what Curtis is saying, it really does boil down to, you know, if you can't manage the current customer flow, then you don't want to turn that faucet on, and I'm just not there yet. I'm hoping, I've got, you know, someone that I'm hiring in the next couple weeks that will be one of the things that she will take on and take control of is Facebook and Twitter. She's pretty savvy, I believe, in that area. So, you know, you've got to have somebody full-time managing that. I think that's really a full-time job, and then the rest of the business has to grow in conjunction with that to stay in tune and stay up to speed on that level of growth. So we're a little ways away from it, but it is important for us. Other franchisees in the system are doing it and are having really good success, so it will be a really important part of my operation as well.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I outsourced my social media 18 months ago, and I love it. I've got somebody writing my newsletter, blogging, Twittering, LinkedIn, Facebooking for both businesses, and it is something that you always need to stay on top of and learn and see the new upgrades and what's new that I don't have the time or the attention span. So for me, having an expert do that for me, I think is probably one of the best investments that I've done for both of my businesses.
All right, let's give a big round of applause for our panelists and our speaker tonight. Thank you very much for joining us.